City's COVID cases continue to rise and the majority involve young people. Alan Zeman says business in bars is seriously hurt by new government measures. New local airline prepares for takeoff despite the pandemic. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. The city's COVID caseload continues to rise. 1,276 new infections were reported today, including 1,160 local cases and 116 imported ones. Authorities highlighted recent infections mainly involve young patients, and the increase in cases is linked to the relaxation of social distancing rules.
For the fourth day in a row, Hong Kong's COVID infections topped the 1,000 mark. A resident at an elderly care home in Fanling tested positive using a rapid antigen test yesterday. One carer who had attended to him also tested positive today. A resident at a daycare centre for the elderly in Tsuen Wan came down with COVID. A total of 9 residents and staff members have to be quarantined. 4 more residents of the Christian Family Service Centre Sheng Chun House in Kwun Tong, who were sent to isolation in the quarantine facility at Asia World Expo, have been infected. So far, 19 people linked to the care home have tested positive for COVID.
Of course, the risk going up. If home workers become infected and then they go to work, it's possible that they would bring the disease to the home.
3 more workers at the central Kowloon Road construction site have been infected, bringing the cluster's total number of confirmed patients to 10. 22 officers of the Police Operations Wing have tested positive for COVID, with patients confirmed with the Omicron mutant strain. Health authorities say more than half of the recently infected patients are aged between 20 and 49, adding that's the complete opposite of the 5th COVID wave, where most patients were the elderly.
We have seen this rebound because of the relaxation of social distancing measures, so that people resume activities. That's why there is a high chance of transmission. That's why it may involve people of a younger age.
Meanwhile, several cases have been reported at both the Greenfield English International Kindergarten in Lohas Park and the Evangel College in Cheung Kwan O.
The government now requires patrons of bars and clubs to show negative rapid antigen test results before entering the premises. Alan Zeman, chairman of the Lan Kwai Fong Group, warns the bar industry will be unable to survive if this measure is in place for the long term. He added it is unfair that the whole industry is being penalized given the relatively low caseload from bars.
The bars have followed all the restrictions from the government, which is 3 vaccinations. Everybody has to have triple vaccination to do the Leave Home Safe app before they come in. I think it's time for the government to really help this industry and really look at and not punish them because they've followed all the rules. The rest of the world has opened up. The rest of the world is basically living a normal life. It's time that Hong Kong people also need to start living a normal life.
Demand for quarantine hotels is running high, with most of them fully booked up to mid-August. The remaining options are hotel rooms that charge more. According to Immigration Department figures, the number of tourists from the mainland who arrived from the city through the airport jumped from less than 100 last month to 1,500 daily arrivals this month. The tourism sector says that has contributed to the higher demand for quarantine hotel rooms. Meanwhile, Betty Young from the Hong Kong Employers of Domestic Helpers Association said that it had received requests for help from employers. She noted employers couldn't afford expensive quarantine hotel rooms and would rather wait longer for foreign domestic helpers to come to the city. Despite the pandemic, which has seriously affected the aviation industry, a local airline company will launch its first flight next month. But an expert said the carrier may encounter operational challenges. Christy Khan has more.
Hong Kong-based carrier Greater Bay Airlines is set to launch its first flight by mid-July at the earliest. Although the airline was established amid the pandemic, its chief executive Adrian Yao believes offering brand new services, including providing hamburgers as an in-flight meal option and a service helping passengers book restaurants ahead of arrival in their destinations, will help attract customers. He added giving flexibility to customers is important. Yao also said he's confident Hong Kong will be transformed into a successful international aviation hub, which is highlighted in the National 14th Five-Year Plan. The airline has hired some 140 staff members, mostly from the now-defunct Cafe Dragon. The company is now leasing Boeing 737 jets, and the airline's CEO said they will consider adding more aircraft if needed. But Simon Lee, an academic from the Chinese University's Business School, said the carrier will face challenges as there are other competitors like Hong Kong Express, an existing low-cost airline in that market. Given the pandemic situation in Hong Kong and soaring oil prices, Lee also suggested the airline should avoid any rapid business growth. Christy Khan, TVB News.
A woman caught carrying a pair of multi-purpose pliers and a can of lighter fluid in 2019 was sentenced to 18 months in jail. The incident happened when anti-government protests occurred near the Polytechnic University. The court heard that on November 17, 2019, protesters occupied the Polytechnic University and were besieged by the police. Riots took place at various locations in Kowloon. Kwok Hoi Ying was arrested during the early hours on November 18, 2019, at a back alley in Yau Ma Tei. Judge Josiah Lam pointed out that although the riot happened outside the alley, Kwok surely possessed the pliers and fuel for use in any riot or unlawful assembly on the night. Executive Council member Ronnie Tong believes those who are willing to join the next administration are likely to agree with John Lee's results-oriented approach. Tong noted the public will soon know if he's staying in EXCO. He said many people with a civil service background were expected to be in John Lee's cabinet, adding this is a nod from the current government towards elite civil servants. Speaking on a radio program, Tong stressed the defeat of democratic camps in the city was the result of a misjudgment on their part, thinking that creating pressure would make Beijing give in. He added having only one non-pro-establishment lawmaker in LegCo is certainly not something the central government would like to see. Over in Shanghai, at least one person died after a fire broke out at a petrochemical company early Saturday. The fire occurred at around 4:30 a.m. at the plant located in Jinshan district. A driver of a transport vehicle died and an employee of the company was slightly injured. Firefighters and rescuers rushed to the site and the company said the fire has been effectively controlled and protective burning was being carried out. The incident did not affect the nearby water environment. The cause of the fire is under investigation. President Xi Jinping addressed the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum on Friday when he called on the world to reject supply disruption and unilateral sanctions. Caleb Leung has details.
The plenary session of the 25th St. Petersburg International Economic Forum was held in St. Petersburg in Russia on Friday. Addressing the session via video, President Xi Jinping said it is important that the world respects and supports all countries' pursuit of development paths suited to their national condition. He also said the world needs to advance economic globalization. Xi said the world should reject attempts at supply disruption, unilateral sanctions, and remove trade barriers. Instead, countries should keep global industrial and supply chains stable, tackle the worsening food and energy crises, and revive the world economy. Xi said the resilience, potential, and long-term sustainability of the Chinese economy remain unchanged. Xi added China stands ready to work with Russia and all other countries to explore development prospects and share growth opportunities. Russian President Vladimir Putin, who made his comment shortly after Xi's video address, said Russia's cooperation with Beijing was driven by China's potential and not geopolitical events. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
Still to come on tonight's news. German Chancellor calls for dialogue with Vladimir Putin over war in Ukraine. as the Russian leader criticizes the West over sanctions. An extraordinary heat wave hits countries across Europe. A warm welcome back to TVB News. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky has hailed his country's resilience amid Russian aggression, with the country apparently edging closer to joining the European Union. The visiting German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said European leaders will continue talking to Russian President Vladimir Putin to persuade him to withdraw his troops. Nazvi Karim reports.
Volodymyr Zelensky struck a defiant tone in his address to the nation, saying Ukraine values are aligned with those of Europe. Joining the European Union would be a symbolic boost for Ukraine as they defend themselves against the forces of Vladimir Putin, who wants to pull Ukraine back into Russia's sphere of influence rather than the West's. Zelensky also hailed the release of Ukrainian paramedic Yulia Payevska, also known as Taira, who used a body camera to record her work in Mariupol before she was captured in March. After European leaders visited Kiev to lend their support for Ukraine's EU membership, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said it was crucial to continue direct talks with Putin in their efforts to end the war.
It is absolutely necessary to speak to Putin, and I will continue to do so, as the French president will also. When I speak to Putin, I say, please understand that there will be no dictate peace. And if you really believe that you will rob some land and then hope that the times will change and all the things will become normal again, this is a mistake. You have to withdraw your troops.
Meanwhile, smoke rose above buildings in the separatist-held East Ukrainian city of Donetsk as heavy shelling continued. This man fired shots from a rifle at a drone flying above, while firefighters scrambled to put out fires. Putin has insisted all along that his reason for invading Ukraine was to protect Russian speakers in the east from persecution and attacks. In Lysychansk, also in the east, officials say at least 4 people were killed and 7 wounded after an airstrike on a building said to be sheltering civilians. Lysychansk is on the other side of the Seversky Donetsk River from the battleground city of Severodonetsk, which has seen some of the most brutal street fighting of the war so far. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson paid tribute to Ukrainian soldiers killed during Russia's invasion after making a surprise visit to Kiev, where he met the country's President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Just to say how strongly we support Ukraine and the people of Ukraine. And I want to say thank you to your incredible resistance. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Johnson and Zelensky laid wreaths at a memorial wall and lit candles at the St. Michael's Golden Domed Monastery. They were also shown destroyed Russian military hardware as Johnson congratulated Ukraine forces for destroying the tanks. However, Johnson's trip to Ukraine was criticized by some British lawmakers after he cancelled an appearance at a conference in Northern England ahead of 2 crucial by-elections for his Conservative Party. Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke at some length about the ongoing conflict in Ukraine at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. Putin criticized Western sanctions on Russia, but he suggested that Moscow may not be opposed to Ukraine joining the European Union. Daniel Rao reports.
The conflict in Ukraine was high on the agenda as Russian President Vladimir Putin delivered an address at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. He said Russia's economy will overcome what he called reckless and insane sanctions imposed on the country by the West and its allies after Moscow launched its invasion of Ukraine. Hundreds of multinational companies have suspended their Russian operations or left the nation entirely. Putin said trying to damage his country's economy didn't work. He stated Russian businesses and government authorities have since worked in a composed and professional manner. The Russian president added the country is normalizing its economic situation while stabilizing its financial markets as well as banking and trade systems. Still, he said Russia's projected annual inflation rate of around 16.7% is too high. Putin criticized the US, saying Washington sees itself as a messenger of God on earth, while accusing Western nations of clinging to the shadows of the past. Putin went on to defend Russia's invasion of Ukraine, saying Kyiv posed a threat due to its desire to join NATO. He said it was necessary to protect people in parts of eastern Ukraine controlled by Kremlin-backed rebels and to guarantee Russia's security. He claimed Russia's objectives in Ukraine could be achieved following more than 16 weeks of fighting. Putin added that sooner or later the situation in Ukraine will normalize, as he stressed that Moscow is not threatening anyone with nuclear weapons. The Russian president said Moscow has nothing against Ukraine joining the EU, as the bloc isn't a military organization, a political organization like NATO. He stated that the Kremlin will accept any of the choices made by the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics about their futures. Moscow recognized the two areas as independent states days before it began its invasion of Ukraine. However, none of the Kremlin's allies have followed suit. Speculation is mounting that the separatist areas may be planning to hold votes on whether to join Russia. Daniel Roll, TVB News.
A Russian-owned super yacht seized by the U.S. arrived in Hawaii's Honolulu harbor flying an American flag. Last week, the U.S. won a legal battle in Fiji to seize the vessel and subsequently sailed it to the Pacific island state of Hawaii. The super yacht, named the Amadea, is believed to be worth around $325 million. It has been linked by the FBI to Russian oligarch Suleiman Karimov. Assets of oligarchs have been targeted by Washington and its allies as part of wider sanctions in response to Russia's ongoing invasion of Ukraine. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange's family has vowed to appeal after British Home Secretary Priti Patel approved his extradition to the United States. Assange is wanted by U.S. authorities on 18 counts, including a spying charge. They are related to WikiLeaks' release of confidential U.S. military records and diplomatic cables, a move which Washington said had put lives in danger.
The UK government today has decided that a journalist and publisher can be extradited from their country for publishing evidence of war crimes, torture and corruption. Julian Assange will appeal this decision to the High Court in the UK. He has 14 days to appeal the decision, but what this decision means is that basic journalism that people do every day, sourcing information, publishing information, is now illegal in the UK.
Originally, a British judge ruled Assange should not be deported. The judge said Assange's mental health meant he would be at risk of suicide if convicted and held in a maximum security prison. But this was overturned on an appeal after the US gave assurances. That includes a pledge that the 50-year-old could be transferred to his home country, Australia, to serve any sentence. In the Amazon rainforest, a forensic exam carried out on some human remains found that they belonged to British journalist Dom Phillips, who was doing research work for a book in the area bordering Peru and Colombia. According to Brazil's federal police, a search is underway for a third man suspected of involvement in his killing. The remains of a second person, believed to be that of indigenous expert Bruno Pereira, are still under analysis. On June 5th, Pereira and Phillips vanished in the remote Javari Valley. Earlier this week, police recovered human remains from a grave in the jungle. They were led there by a fisherman who confessed to the killing of the two men. Yesterday was the 50th anniversary of the Watergate scandal. The two journalists who broke the story, Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, spoke about the events that led to the resignation of then U.S. President Richard Nixon. The two also analyzed how it compared to revelations emerging from the current hearing by the House on the attack on the Capitol. The probe indicates that former President Donald Trump pressured his Vice President, Mike Pence, to overturn his 2020 election defeat, despite being told repeatedly it was illegal to do so. Much of Western Europe is baking in unseasonably hot weather, with countries from the Mediterranean to the North Sea experiencing temperatures of more than 30 degrees Celsius. In Rome, temperatures were as high as 37 degrees by midday as Italian officials raised an orange alert, the second highest level for a number of cities. Tourists can be seen stopping by fountains to fill water bottles and cool down, with the temperature expected to reach up to 38 degrees. Meteorologists says the unusually early heat wave is a sign of what's to come as global warming continues. And that's the news for tonight. Thanks for watching.